Back in 1961, a psychologist at Yale asked a question that, well, it's one of history's darkest, isn't it? Can good people, people like you and me, be made to do truly evil things? The experiment he came up with to find the answer became one of the most famous and, frankly, one of the most disturbing in all of psychology. So today, we're going to dig into it. We're going to see how he did it and what it tells us about the shadows lurking in human nature. Just picture this for a second. You hear those words. You have no other choice, you must continue. They're coming from a guy in a lab coat who seems to be in charge. You can feel your heart pounding. Maybe you're sweating a little because you can hear someone screaming in the next room, and it's because of you. What do you do? I mean, really, what do you do? That right there, that was the terrifying choice at the very core of the Milgram experiment.
So you've got three pieces to this puzzle. A volunteer, the real unsuspecting subject of the experiment. An actor whose whole job is to pretend he's in agony. And then, the machine. A machine supposedly built just to inflict pain. It's all a carefully staged play, and the volunteer has no idea they're the star or that the machine is the centerpiece of a massive, shocking deception.
All right, so let's get into it. This whole thing was designed to push regular people into a horrifying moral corner. It was a direct clash. Your own conscience versus a direct command from someone in charge.
But you have to wonder, right? Why would anyone even come up with an experiment this intense? Where did this idea even come from? Well, the answer takes us back to the aftermath of World War II and the trial of a very famous Nazi. So it's 1961, and the world is watching the trial of Adolf Eichmann. This guy was one of the main organizers of the Holocaust. And his defense, it was shocking. He basically said, "I don't feel guilty. I was just a bureaucrat, a cog in the machine. I was just following orders." This defense, just following orders, really got under the skin of a Yale psychologist named Stanley Milgram. It made him wonder, could it be true? Could Eichmann and so many others not be some kind of unique monsters, but just ordinary people? People who found themselves in a situation so powerful it made them do the unthinkable. And that brings us to Milgram's big idea, which he summed up perfectly right here. Basically, he's saying, look, it's not always about what kind of person you are, it's about the situation you're in. He believed that the context, the environment, could have this incredible power over us, sometimes even more power than our own conscience. So he built an experiment to find out exactly how far that power could push someone.
Okay, so how did he test this wild theory? The setup he created was nothing short of brilliant. It was like a piece of theater designed to be completely believable and incredibly stressful.
So you answer a newspaper ad for a study on memory and learning. Sounds harmless, right? You show up at Yale University, very official. You walk into the lab, and there's the experimenter and another guy who's supposed to be a volunteer, just like you. Except he's not. He's an actor, part of the setup. Then they do this little draw to assign roles, but it's totally rigged. You, the real volunteer, always get assigned the role of teacher, and the actor, he's always the learner.
The job seems straightforward enough. As the teacher, your task is to read a list of word pairs to the learner, who's in another room, supposedly strapped to a chair. Then you test his memory. And here's the catch. Every time he gets one wrong, you have to give him an electric shock. And with each mistake, you have to increase the voltage by another 15 volts.
And this machine, it looks so real. I mean, a big panel with 30 switches. The labels start out mild, slight shock, but they get more and more intense, all the way up to a final switch just marked with a terrifying XXX. And as the teacher, you hear everything through the wall. First, it's just little grunts, but at 150 volts, the learner starts shouting, "Get me out of here!" Then come the screams of pure agony. And then, after 330 volts, just silence.
Now, before he ran this, Milgram actually asked a group of psychiatrists what they thought would happen. They all agreed. Maybe 1% of people, the most cruel, sadistic fringe of society, would go all the way to the end. Well, let's just say they were really, really wrong.
Just look at this. The difference between what the experts predicted and what actually happened, it's absolutely mind-blowing. They thought almost no one would cross that line. But Milgram discovered that most people didn't just cross it, they blew right past it. And this is while they were visibly distressed, sweating, trembling, begging to stop.
65%.
Let that sink in for a second. That's nearly 2 out of every 3 people. Ordinary people who came in off the street. They flipped that final 450-volt switch, even after the person in the next room went completely silent, potentially unconscious or worse. It's just staggering.
So the real question is, why? Why did they do it?
Now, Milgram's conclusion wasn't that he'd accidentally discovered a town full of monsters. No, he had a different theory, a really powerful psychological idea to explain how this could happen.
He came up with this term, the agentic state. Think of it like this. It's a mental shift where you basically hand over your conscience to someone else. You stop feeling responsible for what you're doing. You start to see yourself as just an instrument, an agent who is just carrying out orders for somebody else. In this case, that somebody else was the authority figure in the white lab coat.
So you've got these 2 different modes of thinking. Normally, we're in what you could call an autonomous state. We're in charge, our conscience is our guide, we feel responsible. But when that switch flips to the agentic state, everything changes. The authority figure's orders become our guide. Suddenly, the feeling of responsibility for hurting the learner, it just wasn't on the teacher anymore. It was on the experimenter, the guy who just kept saying, the experiment requires that you continue.
As you can imagine, when these results came out, they sent shockwaves around the world. But it wasn't just fascination, it was also a massive controversy. And honestly, the debate over this experiment is still raging today.
So what's the legacy here? Well, first, the ethics of it were pretty messy. The participants were seriously deceived and went through a lot of real stress. That actually led to major changes in research, like the requirement for informed consent we have today. The biggest takeaway, of course, is this terrifying idea that situations can literally overpower our personal morals. But it's not quite that simple. Critics rightly point out that when Milgram changed the setup, like if the experimenter left the room, obedience dropped like a rock, sometimes all the way to 0. So it's not some automatic switch. The dynamic is way more complicated.
In this quote from Milgram himself really just nails it. When you're just one link in a chain, it becomes dangerously easy to shrug off responsibility. Being part of a hierarchy, just taking orders, creates this buffer between you and the real-world consequences of your actions. It makes it possible to do things you'd never, ever dream of doing on your own.
So this all brings us right back to that first question. But now it's for you. Of course, it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, I'd never do that. I'd be the one to walk out. We all want to believe that. But what Milgram's work shows us, what's so unsettling about it, is that the line between who we think we are and what we might do under pressure is incredibly thin. So the question isn't about them anymore, it's about you. When faced with authority, who are you really?